All right, we're here at the lovely Southgate House Revival, Newport, Kentucky, for Moon Runners. Great festival. Have you been before?
This is my first year.
Mine too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's usually in Chicago, but it's here.
We're popping our cherries together.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
It's been awesome so far. Last day.
Yeah.
Last day.
And Stella Martinez is with us of Gunsafe. They perform tonight.
We do at 10, but by the time you hear this, it will be too late to make any difference. So.
Yep, too late for that.
But if you,
I'm excited for your set, though, for real.
I am too. You know, we don't all live in the same place, so it really does make these shows where we get together special because we live in 4 different states at this point. So coming out here was like the reason for the recent run of shows, and we really haven't done a lot of touring in the last couple of years. I think we maybe did one sort of little run. We did a lot of our touring in the Pacific Northwest because that's where we lived, and also low-key because it was summertime and the swimming is the best. Like, no offense everybody, there's no bug. I don't want to blow up the Pacific Northwest too much, but not bugs, nothing spiky, the water's beautiful. There's like you can see 15 feet down into crystal clear water, you know, like I like the middle of the country. Some of those like spring-fed things are really nice, but there's always snakes, so.
Yep.
I already got a tick on me. This is a tour of me getting several tick bites, so.
Just don't get Lyme disease.
Well, okay, so this can be a helpful tip. This can be the helpful tip segment of your podcast, but if you get the tick off within 24 hours, it's really rare for you to get any kind of tick-borne illness. So if you're in tick country, practice tick awareness and just make sure you check yourself every night. If you get them off before it goes too far, you're doing okay, you know? But yeah, we stayed in Kansas on the way out here. My friend has a really lovely farm out there, and I just kept finding little teeny tiny ticks. And so we got to the hotel that night and everybody went to sleep, and I lucked out because it was one of those bathrooms that has like the mirror in like everything. It's like a big room, you know, so I can like get in there, and I was like, all right, we just got to check it out. And I had 3 ticks on me, and one of them was in a vulnerable area, shall we say. So then I had to really just get up and close and personal in that mirror with that hotel lighting. So safe to say I got a little humbled on the way here, you know, like we're all just flesh bags. We're all just, you know, walking sacks of blood with wet skeletons inside. So there's that. But yeah, so we've been all together with this run. This is like, I guess like our 4th show so far, and we practiced under a bridge this morning. So it wasn't on purpose. It was because we just wanted to, like, you know, get a little practice in before we play tonight. Like, just we feel like it's an important thing, and we want to be as tight as possible. And we haven't played for the last 2 days. And 2 of our members have to sit down because the cello and we don't have seats. So we ended up under a bridge, and they were like sitting on one of those little like safety bumpers around a pillar. And it was the perfect height. So again, pro tip: perfect height if you got cello players. But yeah, we actually have a set list. Like, I know that shouldn't sound like that's a different thing for us, but a little bit different. So sometimes we have a rough idea of how it's going to go a lot of times, but we try to sort of feel the moment out. But this time we're like, all right, we want to keep it tight. We like, you know, we want to hit a lot of the new material, and I feel really good about it. So yeah, and it's been such a nice festival. Everybody, the vibe is really fucking high, and like, it's just really sweet. And I know there was some uncertainty, definitely for us and everybody else, of like whether it was going to happen. And like, running some shit like this is not easy.
Yeah. Oh.
And I think if you've never had to like organize something at all, you really don't get it. And it's a lot. And I know a lot of festival people, like the money, I mean, it's always money for everybody, for the artists, for everything. It's like, that's where the crux comes in of artistic endeavor. You're like, I want to put this thing out with my friends. I want to have a band, I want to do this, but the money's the hard part, right?
Yeah.
So
it's always
So if you're a finance bro and you want a tattooed face wife, please do reach out to me. We can work something out. I mean, a patron, maybe not like a wife, like a patron, you know, that's a good system. But yeah, so we met initially, original Gunsafe started in Albuquerque when I was in high school, but we didn't call it that yet. It was just like the first like similar, like I met this girl and she's like, I heard you play guitar, and I was like, oh, well, and she's like, I play bass, we should play together sometime. We're like, all right, let's do it. So we cobbled it together. She ended up getting suspended. We didn't see each other for a couple years, ran back out into each other after high school, and we're like, let's get serious about it. We got a drummer. We're like, we got to come up with like an actual name for this. And I was taking like a little trip out to Chicago from Albuquerque. Weirdly, it's kind of like a full circle thing. And somewhere in Missouri, I was like thinking like, all right, I need a name for this band. Names have a lot of power. what is it going to be? And I was like, I need a sign, like creator, like give me a sign, you know? And I looked out in the field and there's just this sign that says Gunsafe. It doesn't say use a gun safe. It doesn't say here's my gun safe or anything like that. It was just, I can still see it in my head. It was red letters on a white board. And I was like, all right, 7 letters. I like that. That's a good number. And it's kind of like ambiguous. Like, are you pro-gun? Are you anti-gun? Are you like neutral? Who knows? You know, it's provocative.
Yeah.
people love it. It's like lady lumps, you know. Nobody knows what it means. But so yeah, that was like an iteration of that. I ended up traveling a lot. I had my kid. We got back together after that and just I've kind of consistently played music my whole life because I come from a family of musicians and whatnot. And I ended up moving to Northern California when my kid was about 3. And I had a roommate that played accordion, and she basically like strong-armed me into starting a band because I kind of was at a point where I was like, I make as much money solo, which is not true. I mean, it's sometimes a little bit true. And I was like, I don't want to really like be at the mercy of people flaking out on me or whatever, but she talked me into it. So we started going under that Gunsafe name, and there's still some songs we wrote in that era that we still do play. And then we ended up drawing in Norm, who I'm still currently playing with. He is a booker and promoter up there, which is how we met. Somebody dropped off a show last minute and they suggested us to fill in, and we met him and he said, oh, I play some upright bass. We're like, oh, we need a bass player. And he's like, well, I'm pretty busy, you know? And we were like, okay, but then after we played, he's like, okay, actually I'm down, you know? So that was probably...
Yeah, to test, see what it was all about.
Yeah, I mean, don't blindly commit to being somebody's bass player,
yeah,
for
that's
sure.
True.
For sure. So he joined us. We had a banjo player, Ethan. We had a good long run up in like Arcata, Eureka, McKinleyville area. Did a couple little tours of the Pacific Northwest. It's very easy and chill. Ethan ended up leaving under some things, and he's one of the few people I've ever written songs with because, again, people flake out on you. And if you write songs with somebody and then they don't want to be cool about it later, your song baby has been orphaned and it is abandoned, you know? So we had a few issues over stuff like that, and it's like, whatever, just move on. I ended up getting a lineup then that I really, really fell in love with. It was like Rachel Herdina on like washboard and like suitcase kick drum, and basically she played piano, and I was like, hey, here's a washboard, here's a suitcase kick drum, figure it out. And she did. She was really like a natural percussionist. She was really incredible, did a lot of complex stuff. Mindy somehow heard, Mindy who's playing with us tonight, who plays banjo and steel drum, which is, yeah, there's gonna be a steel drum. There's gonna be a steel drum. She somehow heard that Ethan had left the band, and she was like, oh, I heard you guys might need a banjo player and I sing and whatever. And initially, like, you might have to cut the part where I sound really shallow, but that might be cutting a lot of this. But initially when she showed up to practice, she was like in like a t-shirt and like Birkenstocks, and I was like, what the fuck is this? You know? Like, I was just like, oh my God. But then the instant and her banjo is great, but the instant she opened her mouth and started singing harmony, my head just snapped around, and I was like, okay. And then of course she cleans up for shows, and now I understand, because I'm at the age where like, honey, I'm wearing sweatpants if it's possible. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's not at the dog park, I look horrible. Like, and also like, you know, you don't want to look too good at the dog park. You might get attacked. Like, it's always like a consideration, but like, I get it a little bit more now, farther in this journey of life, you know. But she's been with us since then. Gosh, that must have been 2012. So we're talking 12 years at this point in time. And then Fanny, who plays cello, we met her because she was in a band called Wood Spider, who, if you all have never heard them, you should 100% look them up. They're incredible orchestral, like chamber folk. I don't really know how to explain it. They toured with Blackbird Brahm for a little bit and stuff. Like, they definitely had their thing, but they didn't end up staying all together. And they were one of the few, what I would call maybe like kind of a band democracy band, where everybody wrote songs and it was very much dependent on having all of those people, you know, together.
Right.
As opposed to, if you're a control freak, you can have a band called Gunsafe and just call it that, whether it's just you, whether it's you and other people, like, just keep calling it Gunsafe, and then everybody's like, oh, I've heard you, and it's like, yes, sometime in the last 20 years, you probably heard me, you know,
yeah.
Like, but yeah, so we played a show with them in Arcata, and me and Fanny just talked all night. We really hit it off, and one of her other members hit it off with one of my other band members, and we did a tour. Our last tour that really went this far south and east, with her and Esteban, also out of Wood Spider, and me and Rachel, so it was a very stripped down version. But she's just played with us since then, and that was at least 9 years ago. So everybody's kind of old hand at this. And even though we don't get to live in the same place, the pieces come back. And is the first show good? I don't know. But at this point, we're at the 5th show. So we're dialed in at this point. You know what I mean? But I don't think anybody ever complains. You know, I don't think they hate it. But it is a very special lineup, and I'm really excited that we get to do that. I live in Albuquerque, which is where I'm originally from, like I said, because my dad is 83, and about like 8 years ago, he called me, and I swear, like, my dad has this like sixth sense of when I'm stoned, and that's when he calls, because it never fails. It's like, as soon as I'm like, oh, all right, and he called, and he's like, I'm gonna die. And I was like, what, like soon? Because, you know, he's old, he was 42 when he had me. And he was like, no, but just like eventually. And you've been out there for like almost a decade, and your son needs to know his culture, which is true. And y'all just need to come back. And I was like, shit, like, I guess I just really do need to come back. And so I moved back, but hometowns can be real tricky. Do you live in your, do you live in your hometown?
No.
Okay. So
but I'm very close. I'm like 20 minutes from.
But you're at least far enough away to pretend like maybe you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. You probably,
I drive through some areas and I'm like, man, it's been a long time I've been through. This is home.
It gives me sort of an existential angst. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like suddenly I haven't gone anywhere or done anything, and I know that's not true, but I avoid the area of town that I grew up in at all costs, for sure. Like, living in Albuquerque, as long as I'm somewhere that maybe I don't associate with like high school, it's okay. And you always gotta look your best when you live in a hometown, because you just never know when you're gonna see someone from high school that you hated. Right. So the pressure to keep it tight is like, you know, it's really up there. But yeah, musically, there's very cool, like diverse, like DIY type of scene, and there's a little bit more of like the sort of like country Americana stuff, like Santa Fe, Taos area, which is not that far away. But sometimes you get in this mode where you're like, an hour. Am I gonna drive? But I feel like you probably drive more than an hour sometimes to see shows. Like
me? Oh yeah.
You're like, I suck it up, I do it. But it's kind of, you know, it's kind of your business at this point in time too. So
yeah, kind of. I was already just doing it though, you know what I mean? So I was like,
yeah,
let's just go a little further.
When did you start your podcast?
During COVID.
Yeah.
Everybody, you know, everyone's trying to figure out what to do, and I was like, obviously had time on my hands because I wasn't able to work as much. I was like, I know a lot of cool people and artists that I think and I just love music, so yeah, let's just start talking to people.
Yeah, and especially things like this where you can kind of get everybody. Like, you can get a few people, it makes sense to just like set up and do it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I always think about like people come through town that are like the homies, like pinata protests or whatever. And the thing that I miss a lot about music that I wish there was some way to integrate more into festivals. And I think maybe, were you there at Muddy the year that there was like an open mic kind of tent and then everybody would just jam at the end? It was like maybe 2018, I think. And I thought that was a really good idea. And I think more festivals should have that, awesome. Where people can kind of like, because the jams are to me where the magic is. Like, I love seeing a tight band. I love seeing a rehearsed band. I like being a tight band, being a rehearsed band. But like some of the most magic music moments are always when everybody's just sitting around. You all happen to know the same song. And it's like, if you get a lot of really good players in one room too. And like, even if you're not a good player, how do you get better? By sitting in on the jam, you know? Like,
right, yeah.
Like, Fanny actually has or I don't know if she's gonna do it again, but she had an old time festival on Kauai, and that is very fun. And if y'all are listening and you say, gosh, I just really wanna like be a part of a tradition where maybe I wanna learn music, but I don't want it to be like, I'm going to do lessons, or you can go to old time jams and you can sit in and watch people, and you can also sit in, just, you know, be quiet before you know that what you're doing is good. Like, take it easy. It's always, you know, take a little less than a little bit more. And that's really like a fun way to, because yeah, music used to be this community thing, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like one person on a stage. Like the purpose that music served was more of like community sharing, and it was less about like a virtuoso sort of like watching somebody do something, you know?
Right.
I grew up singing in church, and I think that was a huge thing because it was the only thing that didn't suck about church. And also, I was just like, how loud can I be? And the fact is, pretty loud, you know? And it's like one of the few times you could be really loud. So if you were next to a child scream singing in church, it might have been me, but I don't know.
Yeah, I saw you, I don't know, it was a few years back for the first time at Muddy Roots, and I was just like, man, I love the energy of this band and everything going on. So it was it's finally nice to sit down and do this because we've talked about it here.
Oh yeah, that was a really fun Muddy, but I think that was 2021. I'm pretty sure.
Was it?
I think so. I think it was the first year back after COVID, and we played Saturday during the day in like the small tent. Yeah. Yep. That is the first time at Muddy we've ever had the full entire lineup of like drums, accordion, cello, banjo, bass, and me, whatever I do, you know. That's the only time. The first year we played at Muddy, it was me, Fanny, Issa, who plays accordion, and this gal Nola, who was filling in on banjo, and she's a super talented musician. We played the wood stage at like 4 p.m. and it was when they were like doing that thing where Thursday was just part of the festival. It wasn't like the pre-party or whatever. There was like the 1 year they tried like, should we do 4 days? And they were like, no, this is like way too much or whatever. And so we played the wood stage, and it was like pretty good, but it was also raining. It was like the first time it had rained since anybody got there. So it was like a reasonable turnout. But I feel like on the wood stage, if you're really far back, because that's where you have to be when it's raining, it can be a little bit like, you get lost in the shadow. You know what I mean? You get a little lost in the shadows. 2021, we did like a Saturday in the little tent, and that was fun. That was the only full band lineup. It was right after we recorded our most recent album. And so we were like kind of riding high off that. Those were our only two, like other than at some shows in Humboldt when we were together to record, that was like our only two things that we did together that year. But we had to get something done, you know, after the nightmare of all of what just happened. Do you feel like, I'm curious if other people feel like this. I feel like everyone's kind of collectively decided that we're going to kind of pretend like the pandemic didn't happen in a lot of ways and just be like, we're fine now, we're picking up where we left off. But like, I feel like I'm really damaged, you know? Like,
it's a weird thing. It's like I don't know, it's like a distant memory, but at the same time, it's like still lingering.
And like, you know, it fucked you up.
Oh,
you know, it fucked everyone up.
It fucked all our senses of time up.
Everybody's sense of time. Every performer was suddenly like, well, what am I going to do? Everybody, like, it was a really weird kind of reckoning that really is like, doesn't happen to a ton of people. I mean, it's not the same as having your fucking country mercilessly bombed by America or anything, but like, it's still a pretty fucking weird thing to wrap your head around that you could never be prepared for. Like, you know, some people are really into creating recorded music. I'm not. That's not like where I feel really passionate about things. I'm really passionate about performance, but I never would have been able to articulate that prior to COVID because I didn't realize until I could no longer do it how much it's about an alchemy of you playing with your bandmates. There's that like energy loop, right? And then playing for other people, that is very much an energy exchange. Because when I can see somebody is so fucking locked in up front, like, and you can see people are feeling, then it just amplifies the power of what's going on. It goes back to that music as a community thing, music as like a way to move energy. Like, I really feel like for me, and not everybody has to approach music the same either. For me, it is very much a calling. Like, I sang before I could talk. I was always wanting to sing. I was that little kid that would like corner you and be like, you want to hear the song for The Little Mermaid? And it's like, I still got that on deck. So like, watch out. It could come out at any time.
Open the set tonight with that.
I will. I want to be where the people are. This is like a hot room to sing it into. So, well, that'll go in the blooper reel. We can put that in the blooper reel. But yeah, like, it's always been really important to me because, you know, why do people like sad songs? Why do people need sad songs? And it's because sometimes you can't access your feelings, or you don't even recognize or can't put a face or a name to them until you feel it coming from someone else. And that's what sad songs are for. It's why we have fucking sad songs, so that sometimes it's like an outlet. It's a way for you to get to that place where you can let it go, because you don't want to keep that energy in your body. You want it to move on out. Like, feelings are great, feelings are good, but they should pass through you. They're not who you are. You're the rider, you're not the horse, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, you are the surfer, you're not the ocean.
This gets brought up actually quite a bit on the podcast. Just the idea of like sad songs and why do we like them so much?
Or
And
does this style of genre of music attract some real depressed motherfuckers? Also, like think about that. Like, do cumbia people sit around and be like, we love sad? I mean, there are a lot of sad cumbias. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's not the point of the cumbia to hurt your heart. You know what I mean? That's more the corridos, though. If you were to sit down and talk to somebody about, like, you know, or like the love songs, like if you ever want to see like some drunk uncles cry at like two, you know, you throw that Volver Volver on and everybody's crying. No, but even if you don't understand, you know, the language it's in, you know, Volver Volver, you know, like that feeling. That's, I'm gonna get my like Hispanic card revoked for pronouncing it like that. please don't tell anyone. Yeah, like, you know, it's one of those things that kind of transcends language. I like to listen to a lot of songs that aren't in English. Like, I'm a huge fan of, like, Tuvan throat singing. Like, have you ever seen Tuvan throat singing live or Mongolian?
No.
Okay, so you gotta do it. It's so incredibly powerful. The instrumentation of, like, they have these things called the horsehead fiddle, one of the first bowed instruments in, like, recorded history. And it is like kind of like a big cello. There's one that's kind of like a bass. There's one that's kind of like there's like one that's kind of like a guitar or whatever. And it's just unbelievable to not be able to speak the language, but to still get the gist is like, that's kind of like magic, you know? That's kind of magic. So,
yeah, now you're send me on some.
Please do.
I'm going down the rabbit hole when I get home.
Hoon Her too. Anybody who's listening to this and wants to know where I started and what I really like, HUUN. HUURTU. Hoon Her 2, they have a very cool album called Ancestors Call. It's bitchin'. It's like really fucking good. So I highly recommend that. But seeing it live, if you ever get a chance, there's a couple groups that make it over here, and feeling it pass through your body is just unbelievable. It's hard to describe, you know?
Yeah.
Music that can be felt. Like, I'm also, while I'm on a soapbox, my soapbox rant is I shouldn't have to wear earplugs at an acoustic show. If I'm watching someone play an acoustic guitar, I should not have to wear earplugs. And I have battled many a sound guy over this, and some of them are really cool. I'm not trying to paint all sound guys with a bad brush, but people are like, you got to make sure the people in the back are no. Let them come up front, you know? If they want to sit there and talk about whatever the fuck, let them talk. Who cares? Watch or don't. You're paying the money one way or the other, you know? So watch or don't, and like, let's all have our eardrums, like respect our hearing. But if I have to wear my earplugs to an acoustic show, and again, as somebody who's really loud, like if we were to play in a room that had these kind of acoustics or into the cathedral or whatever, like it might be better experience with very little microphone, very little amplification, you know?
Especially here with the type of crowd that's here, everyone seems to be very attentive.
Yeah, respectful, and they're listening.
And I love
like,
that.
Yeah, like there's a lot of times that I will go without, like we played on the way here, like a house show with the Black Tarpoon folks going through Kansas City. Because it was kind of like a last minute, like, oh, let's throw something together. And I love those guys. And mostly I just selfishly wanted to see them play without having to like shove my way around anybody else, you know? And we played in their kitchen, and like I feel like that's really how we are. Like if you've been to one of those Gunsafe like acoustic shows, like that's the best mix you're ever gonna get. But you know, I understand how it's got to translate. And again, shout out to sound guys, because the ones that are good, they're really fucking good, and it's a whole ass art on itself. Shout out to production guys who record, like, and by guys I mean that's both genders. I hope that's clear, because there are plenty of fucking awesome like women doing sound. There's women doing production, like, but I just, you know, guys is for me a gender neutral term, but I will never tell anybody else their own experience.
I always used that as well, as gender neutral.
You're a guy.
Then, you know, then I started turning to y'all.
Yeah, y'all's good. Sound y'alls, y'all are doing great.
Sound y'all.
Sound y'alls. Yeah, all the little things that go into into recording. Oh, so with our most recent album, obviously 2020 hit. I was actually a semester and a half away from my teaching degree, which I've been working on, chipping away at for a little while, and I could not really wrap my head around online school. I'm like pretty fucking ADD, and I don't say that in like a self-diagnosed way. I say that as I've been a screwball since I was a small child kind of way. And so my brain just had a really hard time making the switch to like, now I do this online. And I was like, I'm not even gonna do it. Plus I had a kid who was in his last year of middle school at that point, and it's just kind of like, know your limits and don't put too much on your own plate or whatever.
Back up.
I feel like that was...
Let me forget that.
I won't.
It was still recording, so we didn't miss anything.
No, but I could tell that came from a bad experience, that you were like...
I just thought about it. I was like, oh, fuck it.
The fucking shut off. But yeah, so we hadn't toured the summer before. I was trying to push through, and I had never considered that music could be a thing I couldn't do, because at the very least, I can walk to almost any given street corner with a guitar and make a lot of money. Yeah. Like, that's always been, like, I'm very loud. I know how to, like, hot tip for buskers in my hot tip section, play songs that people know. Play hip-hop songs that you know, play them in country styles. This used to be an original thing 20 years ago. Nowadays, not so much, but I'm an OG in this game. I'm almost 40. I'll be 40 in like 2 weeks, and that's the one. People like to hear what they know. They don't like to be challenged. If you're trying to get money out of drunk people, that's your best bet. like you know your room. You know what I mean? If you're out here trying to make money off a passerby, you got to know your room. If you're out here with a attentive listening crowd, that's a different set. You know, like.
Yep.
But so it just never had occurred to me that there could be a time where I could neither play music with people or for people. And I didn't touch an instrument for the first 6 months of the pandemic, not a single one. And I play like, I don't know, 5 different instruments, and not well. Like, I don't want it to sound like I'm very accomplished. I mean, I guess I've been a bassist for like a decade at this point, so I can kind of claim that one a little bit. But yeah, it was just a very weird time. And I think everybody kind of has some like trauma from that. And we moved past it really fast, and we didn't move past it because it was over. We moved past it because everybody just had to make money again. Yeah. You know, always ends up being the root of all those evils.
I think speaking for myself, I think I tried to like just bury it.
Yeah.
I don't want to like.
Here's the fun thing about burying trauma. It's still there.
Yeah, it's not the best way to handle it.
It's going to be fun. Life is all about processing whatever is going on inside of you and then moving it on out, like, because we can so easily become stuck. And that's like, even in a physical rut, or even in your brain, they prove that like, if you want to keep like because we're all just, you know, back to being a meat sack. We all have this electric jelly inside our head, and it can make or break your experience on Earth, you know? So I try to take real good care of my meat suit in general, like, you know, like good food, exercise, fucking vitamins, minerals, herbs. I'm like on that shit. I also have the immune system of a Victorian orphan, so I have to do that if I want to be able to tour and not get enough sleep and be around cigarette smoke and be around everything else and still be able to sing. But like the electric jelly is important too. That's like going, like you could have everything in the world, but if your brain's not right, then what does it matter? You're gonna be miserable, you know? And as you get older, it's like anything else. If you don't use it, you lose it. And they've proven that like, if you continue to learn things and you continue to grow, that your brain is like more flexible. Like you have more ability to still make those connections. So I like to really, you know, try and keep going. But I think when you have that trauma in you and you kind of bury it, it's always going to hold you back, you know? So being able to look at something and be like, oh, this kind of fucked me up, and like sit with it. Anything that makes you uncomfortable, you got to learn to just sit with it. Stop running away. You'll never run away from anything that you're anxious about. You'll never be able to run away from any of it. So if you turn around and sit with it, sometimes once you're looking at it, it's not scary anymore and it's bearable. Like, guess what? I'm going to die. We're all going to die. Everyone will die someday. And everyone you love will die. The sun will explode eventually. Like, we will all wither into dust, and, you know, but like, that's okay. That's what makes it magic that we're here. Like, if we all lived forever, nothing would be special. If everything good happened all the time, we wouldn't appreciate it, you know? Like, life is both things, and you shouldn't be turning from either side. And nor should you be like, fuck it, we all die, nothing matters, you know? Like, you have to be like balanced in your life. You can't be on one side or the other. You got to just be balanced. And like, it is, if I could say anything to, if you have younger listeners, I don't know, it's like, A, brush your teeth. You're gonna want those guys. You want them, it's maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. You gotta moisturize, you wanna slather that up, because you only get one of these, you know? Don't walk it off. If you have an injury, don't walk it off. I can't emphasize that enough. I have walked off so many injuries, and they just, again, stay in your body like your trauma, and then you kind of try to find them and piece them together and whatever. But, so we got together. It was the end of 2020. Everything's just whatever. I'm wallowing. I did a couple live streams because people asked me to, but figuring out the computer stuff and sound stuff, again, shout out to sound guys and computer nerds because, and I mean that in a loving, sweet way, because I don't know how to do any of that and I don't care to learn. I don't want to. I can only hold so much up here, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I did a couple live streams and they are horrible because I like to tell a lot of jokes, like whatever, and you can't really tell if anything's like, you can't connect, there's no connection, you're screaming into the void, right? But I did it anyways because people said they liked it and I, you know, try to, and it was nice because people had asked beforehand because I moved, like, do you ever do live streams? And kind of before the pandemic, it wasn't a huge thing the way that it kind of is now. So that is cool. It's made it more accessible for people and, you know, people can tip you over the internet and that's really cool too. So I was just wallowing a lot. I was just kind of like, I just can't really, I was like, I'd like to write new music, but my preferred way of writing an album is to write the songs, play them with a band a million times, and then after maybe like a year, record the songs, right? Because they develop, they take on their own life, they do things that you would never think of otherwise. And, that was just not possible. And I don't really have a band in Albuquerque. And sometimes I start feeling sorry for myself there because I play a lot of solo stuff, but it's not the same, you know, masturbation and getting laid, not the same. Making love, masturbation, they have similarities, but they're not the same. And I kind of had this angel of mediocrity come to me and say, something's better than nothing. Because something is better than nothing. Like if you're sitting there saying, well, oh, it can't be exactly the way I want it. Oh, boo-hoo. Like something's better than nothing. Do it however you have to do it.
Make it work.
Make it work. So I kind of, a lot of the ones on this more recent album are kind of like the ugly children that have been around. And I could never quite make them gel, but I knew there was something there. And, so yeah, a lot of those guys, we kind of call this album Oops All Bummers because there's kind of a lot of bummers. It's coming out of a place like that. I was in I had a relationship in during the COVID, like during the pandemic that was like maybe one of the most destructive relationships in my life. So that's always, you know, a fun thing to just kind of get over because if anything's going to take you down, it'll be yourself and whoever you fall in love with, right? And so Oops All Bummers. So I write all these songs, I record them as a scratch track with my friend, send them out to everybody in their various states. They all figure out their parts, and we got together in Northern California where we used to live and recorded at the studio that we recorded our first album at, and did it pretty much practice for a week all together, and then went in and cut it live because both of our albums are cut live. There's a very minimal overdubs, but that's just the way that I do things. Again, not a recording artist. And the more, if I break it down and I try to sing without playing guitar, it gets bad. It gets so bad. I can't think about what I'm doing at all. I have to just do it.
Right.
I can't be thinking about it. And as soon as I start thinking about it, it just gets awful. And even recording live, the best take is almost always within your first 3 takes. And then after that, you're just wasting time, you know? So we got together and we recorded it. And then I was just really like impressed with how blessed I am to have these musicians that are just phenomenal, that are willing to work with me. And it's not a usual thing where we can get together and tour 9 months out of the year. None of us are able to do that, you know? Like I have a kid who's graduating this year. He's 18. I have 2 old dogs that I don't have with me right now, and so I wake up every morning in a pit of despair and have to climb out by myself. Turns out it was the dogs. It's been the dogs this whole time. The dogs are like my fucking Prozac, I guess, because I'm like, wake up and I'm like, I swear you do want to be here. I swear you do. Anyways, so yeah, none of us can do that traditional route. We can't be out there playing the circuits, and that is how people hear you a lot. But if you record a decent album and you're savvy at the internet, which again, I'm not savvy, which by the way, Instagram, we got an Instagram, we got a Facebook, we got a Bandcamp. I'm not getting TikTok. I'm not doing it. I might hire a young person to do my TikTok for me. If you're a young person, you want to do somebody's TikTok. Do you hear something ringing?
Yeah.
Where is it coming from?
I don't know.
That was weird, right?
I thought it was in the floor or something.
Yeah. My phone doesn't ring like that. Does yours?
No.
That was weird, wasn't it?
This place is haunted.
Do you want to hear our story about why we were excited to come here?
Okay, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, this is...
Okay, this is a good one. This is a really good one. So when we were leaving Muddy Roots last year, it was me and Norm and Jelly driving out in the van, and I was listening to this podcast, and it was about Bobby Mackey's Music World, which is the most haunted roadhouse in America. And it's in Wilder, Kentucky. And I listened to it and I said, I don't know where. Oh, and Bobby Mackey was a kind of like B-list, I hope he doesn't hear this and get sad, but he knows what he is. He was kind of like a B-list, C-list country star of the mid, like early to late 80s kind of era, where he was touring around a lot and he wanted to settle down. So he found this bar, and it had already been a bar or whatever, and he's like, this place is perfect. This is gonna be where I stay, and I have my family, and I can play shows still and everything. And so he found the bar. He liked it a lot. He was into it. It's hella haunted. One of the resident ghosts, the story goes that this guy Carl, who was like the caretaker of the place, kept having dreams about this ghost who was telling him, like, go down into the basement, go down in there, and he was digging in the floor trying to find something, and he found this deep ass well that was probably there from when it was a distillery, like how they got water out of the Licking River, which is right there. But it was like just this deep ass hole, and he supposedly found a journal of a showgirl who had worked there when it was like a roadhouse previously. Her dad owned the place, and she fell in love with a musician, and her dad got jealous and had the guy killed. And it's called Johanna, which is her name. And so Bobby Mackey wrote this song about her, and it's a low-key banger. I heard it and I was like, there's really something to it. Have you ever heard it, do you think?
Well, you're describing the story, and I'm like, I've seen this somewhere.
Yeah,
it
was on a lot of. Oh, it's on a lot of stuff. It's a pretty famous ghost thing.
This, yeah.
Okay, so he has a song called Johanna, and I said, Norm, I want to go to that place, and I want us to make a video of that song. And he's like, I'm down, let's do it. And I'm like, but when are we ever going to be in Wilder, Kentucky? Well, guess what? Guess where that place is? It's 5 miles away from here. I'm not kidding. Bobby Mackey's, yes. Okay, so we get here on Friday, and I hated to miss any Moonrunners, but I had been trying to get on the ghost tours because it's closed now. He had to move to a different building because it's fallen down. It's dilapidated, right? And I'm trying to get on the ghost tour. The lady gets back to me. She's like, we can get you in at 7 tonight. So the whole band goes, and we walk in, and my head snapped around, and I was like, there's something so weird in like this back corner of the building. And I said it to like my bandmates, whatever. And then we go in there and she's talking about it. She's like, and this is the corner where like the psychics all think that the portal is. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, all right, we're feeling it. And I definitely had some like a strange feeling of it's like churning in that corner. It's like this energetic kind of it's like when you're watching the ocean, or like when you're watching a river and there's little sections where it's just swirling like an eddy. Yeah, that's what it really felt like. It felt very water-like in a lot of ways. And we were just like, okay, that's weird. We got a couple weird feelings, whatever. And then she's like, okay, now we're gonna go down to the basement, which again, where Johanna's diary was found, where that well was found. And there's a 100-year-old house in the basement that they built that everything else on top of the distillery and the nightclub and whatever, and you can still see it there. Like, it's still the 100-year-old house. You can go in, that's where he found the journal, that's where whatever. So you go in, and the window of this 100-year-old house is looking out into the basement, which is totally dark. And it would be where the street was back then, right? And it's been built up since then, whatever. So we go in, we all turn the lights off, and we're looking out that window, and I saw something, everybody saw it. Everyone saw it multiple times. I'm like, my hair is standing up on my arms right now because it was people walking by.
Like they're walking down the street.
It looks like when somebody walks down and there's a street light coming and they just are in the light for a second and you can just see them, and there would be like 2 people together, 1 person together, 3 people together. And everybody on the tour was seeing it at the same time. And it had, for lack of a better word, a presence to it, in the sense that it did not look spectral. It didn't look like it wasn't real. It looked like someone was in the fucking basement. There's no way anybody else was in that basement. We looked through everything. There was no way it would have looked like that. We saw people walking by us when we went in. Everybody saw it a bunch of times. And so we were like, whoa, what the fuck? So we went out of that room. We looked around the rest of the basement. There's definitely some weird vibes. There's some rooms that felt like when a train's coming and it like vibrates. It felt like that. It was very, very strange. But the corner that was weird upstairs was kind of at the end of the basement. The house is here. You're looking out here. And it feels like there's just this like loop of energy. And what I think we were seeing is just like what, you know, they call residuals or whatever. It's just somehow, some way, time in the way that it flows, because it's not linear, as we know, because of, you know, quantum physics. It has these little spots where you get a little eddy, right? You just get a little spot that's cut off, and these little weird spots that are kind of, you know, in between maybe like different universes or whatever, they're just strange places. They kind of do attract different things. They do kind of suck in, like how little sticks get sucked in and they get stuck. So maybe you do have an odd concentration of spirits there because it's something that's in the halfway place where they are, you know, like, I don't know. But it was the most crazy thing I've ever seen in my life. I was fully on my cello player, like holding onto her like a backpack, because I was just like, oh my God, what the fuck? And we went out, we looked around, and I said, well, can we go back in there one more time before we leave and see if it happens again? Happened again, and then the ghost lady was like, can we get one more for the road? And one more walked by really fast. And it's crazy because it's just, they all had a different...
Say? Does this happen?
She was like, it's headlights. And we were like, it's obviously not fucking headlights. But you could tell that she knows it's something real. And she's like, I don't have to sell this. It sells itself. But she said it happens every time she's down there. And this place is getting knocked down in July. So, okay, after that, we came back here reared up, because I've seen a lot of weird things. I've lived in haunted houses. I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen anything like that. If you're around, it's going till July. You should come back and go on the ghost tour.
I think I'm going to.
You 100% should. It was
definitely would like
the craziest thing I've ever seen in my entire freaking life. So anyways, we come back here, we're keyed up. As luck would have it, Jessie Williams, my friend who opened the festival with her band Guttertown, had a videographer coming. Her drummer's sister is married to a guy who's a videographer, so I guess you would call that her husband. Is married to a guy who's a videographer, and they were down here to make a video for Jessie's band anyways, and I was like, hey, can you squeeze us in with this just like live thing? Can you do it? And he was like, yes. So we went in front of Bobby Mackey's, and actually the best place to shoot ended up being the outside of where that weird corner is. So you can see it in the video. And we just cut the song live. Like, Fanny didn't plan it because she didn't have time to learn on the cello, and she also didn't want, it was like intermittently raining, so she didn't really want to risk the cello, because her cello is an extremely nice cello. It's very old and very expensive. So, so that's something to look forward to if you're here at Moonrunners. You're gonna hear an old expensive cello in a little bit. But yeah, so we made that video out here. So I really feel like I'm so excited that Moonrunners happened, because a month later after Muddy, Josh hit me up and was like, hey, do you want to play? And I was like, yeah, but I thought it was still in Chicago, and this is the first year it's been here. So I said, Kentucky, is that anywhere near 5 minutes? So I feel the whole thing has really been like orchestrated despite my lack of organization, because I said I wanted to do this thing, but then I would have dropped the ball, honestly. Like, it would have been done on like an iPhone or something, you know? So sometimes
awesome, though.
I feel like it wants to be out there, so I'm really excited to see how it came out. I hope it comes out really good.
Yeah,
but,
definitely send it my way.
I will. Yeah, you can release it. It'd be a follow-up, a nice little follow-up. Fuck yes.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
They're always fun, but you know.
Yeah, I always want to go on podcasts because I listen to a lot of podcasts. So I'm like, when I get my chance, I'm gonna be ready. So awesome. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on, and let's go see some more music.
Let's do it.